You can catch the NFL Network tonight, NFL Total Access at 7 Eastern, as well on Sundays at 1 Eastern, NFL Game Day Live, providing 6.5 hours of in-progress highlights and analysis. He's Brian Billick of the NFL Network, who joins us now. Brian, what do you think of the overtime rule?
You know what? It obviously was brought into focus. We thought we had fixed it by giving both teams a chance to have a possession, unless the team can take it the length of the field and score a touchdown. I'm sure what happened in Seattle will prompt that debate again. But by the same token, you know how phobic the league is about games going excessively long. So I think they'll talk about it. It'll be under advisement. They'll discuss it again. But I think they'll leave it as is. I'm kind of comfortable with where it is. You can take this to an absurd level as to how many possessions. I don't like the college rule. You have to almost totally redesign your team based on the overtime possibilities in college. So, yeah, I can certainly see the discussion, though. It would have been nice to see what Peyton Manning might have done.
Speaking of Manning against that Seattle defense, there were times where he threw some ducks up there. He seemed tentative. Maybe it's Seattle that makes you feel that way, but this is Peyton Manning. What stood out in that performance with Manning against that defense?
I think Denver saved their season and maybe saved the league, because had they gone in and looked terrible, and at times they did, but if it had been a repeat of the Super Bowl, it would have begged the question, at least for Denver, where do we go from now? Okay, let Peyton Manning go ahead and throw 50 touchdowns on the year again and go to the playoffs and whip through the AFC and get down to Arizona and get your butt whipped again from Seattle. And that probably applies to anybody. So I think because of last week and because of this game, all but being a Peyton Manning, it showed there are some vulnerabilities of Seattle, not that they're not a very, very good team. And we don't know what Seattle would do if they had to go into Denver, but don't have to worry about it because that's not going to happen. But you know, you got to give Seattle credit. They're an outstanding defense. They're well-schemed. They seem to have a real understanding of how to defend a Peyton Manning. But at the end of the day, now, Peyton Manning is Peyton Manning, and what on a football field has he not seen, therefore be able at some point, if you give him enough chances, to adapt to?
Russell Wilson, for the first 3.5 quarters, doesn't really... You're not as concerned about his legs. And then he gets to a point where he just feels like, okay, now's the time. It's really incredible that he's not a guy who makes a living with his legs, but he can win games with his legs.
Well, what do we keep saying about whether it's Colin Kaepernick, RG3, it used to be Steve Young? Well, until he learns to operate from the pocket, he's not going to be a great quarterback, but we still want that athleticism. Well, that's the very definition of Russell Wilson. He's not going to expose himself over the entire season to the constant pounding of running to the outside. But what he needs to, and Darrell Bevell does a great job, that last drive, and Jack Del Rio's done a phenomenal job with the Denver defense. I think he should be given an opportunity to be a head coach again. But that last drive, you know, at some point you've just got to fill the rush lanes and say, guys, I don't care if he throws a 90-yard bomb for a touchdown. I don't want Russell Wilson outside the tackles. And at some point, you've got to fill the rush lanes. Yeah, it's a bit of a risk. But I'd much rather make Russell Wilson go 80 yards throwing the ball down to the receiving core that he has than twice on 3rd and 4 getting outside the perimeter of the defense and just totally breaking down both my front seven and my secondary.
I can't let him go right. It's like Roethlisberger. I know it's easier said than done. It's like Manu Ginobili with the Spurs. You can't let him go left. They somehow find a way to go to where they need to go, and Russell Wilson goes right, and you know you're in trouble.
And let's give Seattle and Darrell Bevell, the offensive coordinator, some credit. It was brilliant to all of a sudden go into no huddle in the overtime period to create a pace that makes it tough for the defensive coordinator to orchestrate that tough. One, you wear out the defense, obviously, and to get those orchestrated calls, to do that on the run, to make the assessment, you know, in the back of their mind, and this is who Denver is, so I don't say this by way of criticism, but it's okay. I would say they go the length of the field and they kick a field goal. Okay, at least Peyton Manning gets another chance. He just went the length of the field for a touchdown. We'll let Peyton go win it. And that may have been the mentality right up to the point that they were able to score the touchdown.
He's Brian Billick from the NFL Network, former Ravens head coach, who joins us, Dan Patrick Show. If you were still the Ravens coach, I know hypothetical, outside looking in, What role would you be playing now? Questions would you be asking about the Ray Rice case?
Oh boy, this is one for the ages, because I'm conflicted, because I'm like everybody else. I'm on this other side where the unanswered questions have to be answered. I don't know that it has to be now. We'd like sooner than later. And they will eventually be answered. We know that. We know, and that's the thing that's confounding to me, both for the league and the Ravens. We know eventually everything is going to come out. Everything. It always does. So better now than later. And I imagine we'll hear from the Ravens today, much like we did from the commissioner on Friday, that we're in that process and there's an ongoing investigation, and we apologize for the role we played in it. I don't know that we're going to get a lot of answers from the Ravens today. I guess my bias from the standpoint of having known personally and professionally Steve Bisciotti, Dick Cass, the president, Ozzie Newsome, certainly John Harbaugh, I have a great deal of faith in those men's integrity. What this will translate out to be, what happened for John Harbaugh, it literally has to get into a bunker mode to get this team continually ready for the week-to-week, whatever his responsibilities or complicity is in this or not. You almost have to hold it at arm's length, because you know what? They're going to play on Sunday, regardless of what's said today, regardless of what comes out this week, regardless of you don't get any dispensation for saying, well, there's a lot going on, so no. We're going to play on Sunday, and I got to have my team ready.
Brian, good to talk to you again. Thanks for joining us.
Sounds great.
That's Brian Billick, NFL Network.